Life has a way of throwing things at us that we don't expect. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we prepare, there are moments when everything seems to shift out of our control. You prayed, you worked hard, you did everything you knew to do, but somehow things still didn't turn out the way you expected. And in that moment of frustration, fear, and uncertainty, you ask yourself, what now? But let me tell you something today. When life becomes uncertain, God is still certain. When everything around you feels unstable, God is still the solid rock. When you don't understand the twists and turns of your journey, trust that God does. His plan is bigger than what you can see, and His ways are higher than what you can understand. It's time to stop exhausting yourself trying to figure out everything on your own and let God handle it. See, we like to be in control. We like to know what's coming next. We want to have all the answers, all the steps lined up, all the details worked out. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith is trusting that God knows what He's doing even when we don't. It's believing that He is ordering our steps even when the path doesn't make sense. It's knowing that when we put our lives in His hands, we are in the safest place we could ever be. Think about a child riding in the back seat of a car. That child isn't worried about which turns to take, which streets to avoid, or whether there's enough gas in the tank. Why? Because they trust that the one driving the car knows where they're going. That's how we need to be with God. Stop trying to grab the wheel. Stop trying to figure out every detail. Stop stressing yourself out over things that are beyond your control. God is driving, and He knows where He's taking you. You just need to trust Him enough to ride. There's a story in the Bible about Peter walking on water. As long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he was doing the impossible, walking above the very waves that should have swallowed him up. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the wind and the waves around him, he started to sink. That's what happens when we let fear, doubt, and our need for control take over. We sink. But when we keep our eyes on God, when we trust Him fully, we find ourselves walking above the very things that should have taken us out. Some of you have been sinking because you're too busy trying to handle things on your own. You've been trying to carry burdens that were never meant for you to carry. You've been stressing over things that God already has under control. You've been losing sleep, losing peace, losing joy, all because you won't let God be God in your life. It's time to release it. It's time to surrender. It's time to trust that God knows exactly what He's doing. And here's the thing, trusting God doesn't mean everything will always make sense. It doesn't mean you won't have questions. It doesn't mean you won't go through seasons where it feels like He's silent. But what it does mean is that even when you don't see the full picture, He does. Even when it feels like things are falling apart, He is putting them together in ways you can't even imagine. Some of the greatest blessings in your life will come from the very things you didn't understand at the time. Some of the doors that closed, some of the people who walked away, some of the plans that didn't work out. One day you'll look back and realize that God was protecting you, redirecting you, and setting you up for something greater. You don't have to know all the details. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to trust that the same God who brought you this far is the same God who will take you the rest of the way. So I challenge you today, let go. Let go of the stress, let go of the worry, let go of the need to have all the answers. Hand it over to God and watch what He does. Because when you truly let Him handle it, He will take you places you never imagined, open doors you never expected, and work things out in ways you never saw coming. All you have to do is trust Him. Worry is a thief. It sneaks into your mind, takes your peace, drains your joy, and leaves you restless. Some of you have been living with worry for so long that you don't even recognize what true peace feels like anymore. You go to bed with your mind racing, you wake up with your heart heavy, and you walk through your days carrying burdens that God never meant for you to carry. But here's what you need to understand. Worry changes nothing. It doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't make the situation better. It only wears you down, weakens your faith, and distracts you from what God is trying to do in your life. Fear works the same way. It whispers all the reasons why things won't work out, why you're not good enough, why you should just give up. It keeps you stuck, paralyzed by the thought of what might go wrong. But let me tell you something, fear is a liar. The enemy wants you so consumed by fear and worry that you forget who your God is. He wants you to focus on the problem so much that you lose sight of the promise. But today I need you to make up your mind that you are not going to let fear and worry run your life anymore. You're going to let God handle it. Look back over your life for a moment. Think about the things you used to stress over that didn't destroy you. The situations you thought you wouldn't make it through, but here you are. The nights you cried wondering how things would ever get better, yet somehow they did. If God brought you through before, why wouldn't he do it again? Why would he fail you now? He hasn't brought you this far to leave you. He hasn't carried you through storms just to abandon you in this one. You may not see how it's going to work out, but you don't have to. God already knows. Worry and fear are both rooted in a lack of trust. When you trust God, you don't have to have all the answers. When you trust God, you don't have to figure everything out on your own. When you trust God, you can lay your head down at night knowing that he is working on your behalf even when you can't see it. The Bible says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. That means you don't have to carry this by yourself. You don't have to lose sleep over it. You don't have to let fear rule your heart. You can give it to God. Letting go of worry and fear doesn't mean you ignore your problems. It means you stop trying to solve them in your own strength. It means you stop letting the weight of the situation crush you when you serve a God who is bigger than anything you're facing. Have you ever noticed that the things you stress about the most are often the things God ends up working out in ways you never expected? That's because he never needed your stress. He needed your trust. Some of you have been fighting battles that were never yours to fight in the first place. You've been trying to fix things that only God can fix. You've been trying to figure things out that only God has the answers to. And the reason you're so tired, so frustrated, so drained is because you've been carrying something that was never meant to be in your hands. It's time to release it. It's time to stop trying to control what you were never meant to control. It's time to trust that God knows exactly what he's doing. The enemy loves to use fear to keep you stuck. He'll tell you that if you let go, things will fall apart. That if you stop worrying, nothing will get better. That if you don't handle it, no one else will. But let me tell you something. The moment you release control and let God handle it, you position yourself to receive his peace. His peace isn't like the world's peace. It's not dependent on your circumstances. It's the kind of peace that allows you to walk through the storm and still have joy. It's the kind of peace that allows you to stand in the fire and not be consumed. It's the kind of peace that says, I don't know how, but I know who. So today I want to challenge you. Stop holding on so tight. Stop letting fear and worry rule your life. Stop letting the unknown keep you from trusting the one who knows all things. Lay it at his feet. Release it into his hands. And when you do, you will find that the very thing that kept you up at night will no longer have power over you. The burden you've been carrying will no longer weigh you down. The fear that's been gripping you will no longer control your decisions. Because when you truly let God handle it, peace will replace panic, faith will replace fear, and trust will take the place of worry. Life has a way of testing us. You try to do the right thing, you put in the work, you pray, you believe, but somehow it still feels like you're hitting a wall. The doors aren't opening, the situation isn't changing, and frustration starts creeping in. You start wondering, why is this happening to me? Why does it feel like every time I take one step forward, something pushes me 2 steps back? But hear me when I say this. Frustration is not your final destination. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something greater. What feels like rejection may actually be God's redirection. Instead of letting frustration control you, choose faith. Instead of letting anger, doubt, and disappointment take root in your heart, trust that God is still in control. Faith is easy when everything is going right. It's easy to trust God when the bills are paid, the job is secure, and the relationships are healthy. But what about when things don't make sense? What about when the door you were counting on suddenly slams shut? What about when the opportunity you prayed for doesn't come through? That is where real faith is tested. That is when you have to decide, am I going to let this frustration consume me, or am I going to believe that God is still working even when I don't understand? Some of you have been allowing frustration to shape your perspective. You've been looking at your life through the lens of what's not happening, what hasn't changed, what still isn't fixed. But what if I told you that even in your frustration, God is moving? What if I told you that even when you don't see progress, He is working behind the scenes? Just because you don't see the shift yet doesn't mean it's not coming. Just because you don't feel the breakthrough yet doesn't mean God isn't setting it up. You have to choose faith over frustration. Look at Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream, a vision of greatness, but his journey didn't look anything like what he expected. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If anyone had a reason to be frustrated, it was Joseph. But instead of letting his circumstances define him, he kept his faith. Instead of letting frustration make him bitter, he trusted that God's plan was still at work. And in the right season, at the appointed time, Joseph went from the prison to the palace. The very thing that looked like a setback was what positioned him for his purpose. Some of you are in a season where things don't make sense. You're looking around wondering why things aren't changing. You're questioning why God hasn't opened the door yet. But what if this season is preparing you for something greater? What if the delay is actually protecting you? What if what looks like a no right now is really just a not yet? Because God is setting things up in ways you can't even imagine. You don't have to understand everything to trust that God knows what He's doing. You don't have to see the whole picture to believe that He is working. Sometimes faith means praising God even when the answer hasn't come yet. It means choosing joy even when you don't feel like it. It means trusting that even when things aren't going according to your plan, they are still unfolding according to His plan. Frustration will try to make you quit. It will tell you that there's no point in trying, that you might as well give up, that things will never change. But faith says, keep going. Faith says, God is still on the throne. Faith says, this is not the end of my story. Some of the greatest blessings in your life will come from the moment you refuse to give up. Some of the biggest breakthroughs will happen because you chose to trust God even when it didn't make sense. The enemy wants you to stop. He wants you to throw in the towel. He wants you so focused on what's not happening that you miss what is happening. But when you choose faith, over frustration, you silence the lies of the enemy. When you choose to believe that God is still moving, even when you don't see it, you position yourself for the breakthrough that is on its way. So don't let frustration rob you of your faith. Don't let disappointment shake your trust in God. Don't let a temporary delay make you doubt an eternal promise. Choose to believe that even in the waiting, even in the struggle, even in the uncertainty, God is still working, because when you put your faith in Him, you can be sure that no matter what it looks like right now, your story is not over. Prayer is one of the most powerful tools we have, yet too many of us treat it like a last resort. We say, well, all I can do now is pray, as if prayer is some kind of backup plan. But prayer is not a last resort. It is the first line of defense. It is our direct connection to God, our way of inviting Him into every situation, our way of releasing the burdens we were never meant to carry on our own. Some of you have been running yourself ragged trying to fix things, trying to figure things out, trying to make things happen. You've been losing sleep, walking around with a heavy heart, letting stress weigh you down, when all along God has been saying, give it to me. He never asked you to carry it alone. He never told you to handle it by yourself. But instead of praying, you've been worrying. Instead of talking to God, you've been talking to everybody else, looking for answers, looking for advice, looking for something to give you peace. But real peace doesn't come from people, it comes from God. Prayer isn't about saying the right words or following some kind of formula. It's about having a conversation with your Heavenly Father. It's about opening up your heart and laying everything before Him. The fear, the frustration, the doubts, the struggles. It's about being real with God. Because He already knows what you're going through. He already knows the weight you're carrying. He already knows the battles you're fighting. And He's just waiting for you to bring it to Him. The enemy will do everything in his power to keep you from praying. He will distract you. He will fill your mind with worry. He will make you feel too tired, too busy, too discouraged, because he knows that a praying person is a powerful person. He knows that when you tap into the power of prayer, chains start breaking, strongholds start coming down, and things start shifting in the spirit. Some of you have been looking for a breakthrough, but you haven't prayed about it. You've been waiting for things to change, but you haven't invited God into the situation. God is not a distant figure watching from afar. He is right here, ready to move, ready to help, ready to show Himself strong in your life. But you have to call on Him. The Bible says, ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened. That means some things are waiting on you to ask. Some doors are waiting on you to knock. Some answers are waiting on you to seek. Have you ever noticed that the moment you really start praying, things start shifting? Maybe the situation doesn't change overnight, but something in you changes. You start seeing things differently. You start walking with more confidence. You start resting in the fact that God is in control. That's what prayer does. It shifts your perspective. It reminds you that you are not in this alone, that you serve a God who is bigger than anything you're facing. Look at Jesus. Even in the hardest moments, He prayed. When He was in the Garden of Gethsemane, knowing the cross was ahead of Him, He prayed. And what did He pray? Not my will, but yours be done. That is the kind of trust God wants us to have. The kind that says, Lord, I may not understand it, I may not like it, but I trust you enough to surrender it. Some of you have been wrestling with things that only God can fix. You've been trying to handle things in your own strength, but your strength is running out. You've been trying to hold it all together, but the weight is getting too heavy. It's time to stop trying to fight spiritual battles with human effort. It's time to stop carrying burdens that belong at the feet of Jesus. It's time to start praying like you believe that God is who He says He is. Because when you really pray, when you pray with faith, when you pray with expectation, when you pray and truly leave it in God's hands, you will see Him move in ways you never imagined. Doors will open that you didn't even knock on. Answers will come that you weren't even expecting. Strength will rise up in you that you didn't even know you had. So don't just worry about it. Don't just talk about it. Don't just cry about it. Pray about it. Because when you pray, heaven listens. When you pray, things start shifting. When you pray, you are not just speaking words, you are activating the power of God in your life. There comes a time in your walk with God when you have to make a decision. Are you going to live by fear, or are you going to live by faith? Are you going to let the opinions of others dictate your actions, or are you going to trust what God is speaking to your heart? Some of you have been standing on the edge of something great, something God has placed before you, but fear has kept you stuck. Doubt has held you back. The enemy has whispered every reason why you're not ready, why you're not qualified, why you should just stay where it's safe. But God didn't call you to stay stuck in fear. He called you to move forward in faith. Faith is about trust. It's about believing that even when you don't have all the answers, God does. It's about stepping out even when you can't see the whole picture. Some of you have been waiting for all the details before you move, waiting for everything to be perfect before you take a step. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith is trusting God enough to take the first step before you see the second. It's walking when you don't know exactly where the path will lead, but you know the one who is leading you. Look at Peter when Jesus called him out onto the water. The storm was raging, the waves were crashing, but Jesus said, "Come." And as long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he was walking on the very thing that should have drowned him. But the moment he let fear creep in, the moment he started focusing on the storm instead of the Savior, he began to sink. That's what happens when we let fear take over. That's what happens when we let doubt become louder than our faith. Some of you have been sinking, not because God isn't with you, but because you've allowed fear to steal your focus. Faith requires action. It's not just saying, "I trust God." It's showing that trust in how you live, in how you move, in the choices you make. Some of you are waiting for God to do something, but God is waiting on you to take a step. He has already placed the opportunity before you. He has already given you everything you need, but you have to move. You have to trust Him enough to walk into what He's called you to do. Fear will always try to talk you out of your destiny. It will tell you that you're not ready, that you're not good enough, that you don't have what it takes. But if God has called you to it, He has already equipped you for it. You don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to have every answer. All you have to do is step out and trust that God will meet you there. Look at Abraham. God told him to leave his home, to go to a land that He would show him. Abraham didn't have a map, didn't have all the details. He just had a word from God, and he moved on that word. He trusted that if God said go, then the destination was already taken care of. That's faith. Moving even when you don't have all the details. Trusting even when the path isn't clear. Some of you have been standing in the same place for too long because fear has convinced you that it's safer to stay still than to move forward. But faith is not about playing it safe. Faith is about believing that even if you can't see what's ahead, God has already made the way. And if he's calling you to it, then he will sustain you in it. The enemy wants you to stay in fear because he knows that as long as you're afraid, you'll never step into the fullness of what God has for you. He knows that if he can keep you questioning yourself, you'll never walk in the confidence of your calling. But today, you need to make a decision. Will you let fear keep you stuck, or will you move forward in faith? Because when you step out in faith, doors open that you never expected. When you step out in faith, God makes a way where there was no way. When you step out in faith, you walk into the blessings, the favor, the opportunities that were waiting for you all along. So don't let fear hold you back any longer. Don't let doubt keep you from moving forward. God is calling you higher, calling you deeper, calling you into something greater. And if you will trust him enough to step out, you will see that everything you've been waiting for is already waiting for you on the other side of faith. There comes a moment when you realize that holding on isn't making you stronger, it's only making you weary. Carrying the weight of past hurts, disappointments, and broken expectations isn't helping you move forward, it's only slowing you down. Some of you have been praying for peace, but peace can't come where there's no release. You've been asking God to bring new blessings into your life, but you're still holding on to things he told you to let go of. If you want to step into what God has for you, you have to be willing to release what's behind you. Letting go is not always easy. Sometimes we hold on because we think we need closure, because we're waiting for an apology that may never come, or because we feel like if we let go, we're somehow losing. But letting go isn't losing, it's making room for healing, for growth, for God's plan to unfold in your life. You cannot receive what's ahead if your hands are still full of what's behind. Some of you are carrying things that should have been released a long time ago. You're holding on to what they said about you, what they did to you, the opportunities you missed, the time you wasted. You keep replaying the same moments, reliving the same pain, thinking that somehow if you hold on long enough, you'll make sense of it. But the truth is, some things you'll never understand. Some situations will never come with an explanation. And if you're waiting for all the answers before you let go, you'll be waiting forever. At some point, you have to decide that your future is more important than your past. At some point, you have to say, God, I trust you enough to release this, even if I don't understand why it happened. I trust you enough to move forward, even if I never get the apology, even if I never get the closure, even if I never get the explanation. Because holding on is not making it better. It's only keeping you bound. Look at the Israelites when they left Egypt. God had a promised land waiting for them, but some of them were still holding on to Egypt in their minds. They were free physically, but they were still trapped mentally. They kept looking back, thinking about what was behind them instead of trusting in what was ahead. And because they wouldn't let go of the past, they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Some of you have been wandering not because God doesn't have something greater for you, but because you haven't let go of what he already freed you from. Letting go is an act of faith. It's saying, God, I trust that what's ahead of me is greater than what's behind me. I trust that what you have planned for me is better than anything I'm leaving behind. I trust that you see the bigger picture even when I don't. It takes faith to release what you thought you needed. It takes faith to walk away from what's familiar. But God never calls you to let go of something without having something better in store. Some of you are afraid that if you let go, you'll be left with nothing. But when you release something into God's hands, you are never left empty. When Abraham was willing to lay Isaac on the altar, God already had a ram in the bush. When Hannah surrendered Samuel, God blessed her with even more children. Every time you release something for God, He replaces it with something greater. The enemy wants you stuck in the past. He wants you holding on to old wounds, old regrets, old disappointments, because as long as you're looking backward, you can't move forward. But today is the day you make up your mind. I'm not carrying this anymore. I'm not holding on to what hurt me. I'm not staying in a place that God has called me out of. Because when you let go, you make space for God to do something new. When you let go, you position yourself for the next blessing, the next opportunity, the next level of faith. And what God has in store for you is too great for you to be weighed down by what's behind you. So release it. The hurt, the disappointment, the bitterness, the unanswered questions. Put it in God's hands and walk forward in faith, because the moment you let go is the moment you make room for what God has been waiting to give you all along.